Okay, the T-Tops, we're going to prepare them for paint. And to do that, we need to get off this edge trim. The weather stripping, it's a little bad on this one anyways, but it doesn't matter. We have to get all the weather stripping off in order to get at the screws that are underneath it to remove these trim pieces, or at least this particular one. And I don't know, seems like the right thing to do to replace the weather stripping anyway. So I did a little research on the internet, didn't find much on other people that have done this, so I'm going to try to do a thorough job of documenting it, and hopefully that'll help you out. So I've already done the right side. This is the left side, just so I'd have a better idea of what all needed to be done. So where we're going to start is we're going to take out these two screws on the side, one on each side, and they're into a little clip that helps hold on this headliner. Okay, so once you get those out, then it's only held in place by some Velcro, kind of this industrial stuff. And it's in the corners, in a little ways. And there you can see it. So that's the headliner off. If you didn't remove those screws, you would tear it apart with these clips just pulling against them. Don't do that. All right, now I'm going to pull off some of this hardware. No shims on this one. On the other side, one of them had no shims and one of them had 4 shims. So I made note of that. Get it back, shimmed the same. It's got this little bracket in the bottom here that moves around, and maybe I could have marked these before I loosened them off, but I'm thinking with new weather stripping I'm going to have to fine tune it anyway, so I didn't mark them. This one I can see does have shims. This one has a single shim. And into the parts bag. Okay, now I'm going to try to remove this portion of the weather stripping, and I'm going to try not to destroy it in the process. This thing worked pretty good on the other side. It's just stuck in there with adhesive. There you can see where the weather stripping is really in bad shape. I'm going to continue and just work my way around. The other 3 sides of this have these little white plastic plugs that snap into some holes, and they end up tearing out of the weather stripping, and the plugs remain in the holes as this comes out. There's one of the plugs I'm talking about right there. That one came out, and I broke the weather stripping on the next plug. Not a big deal. working my way around, peeling it off. All right. The weather stripping itself is off. So now I'm going to remove these plastic plugs. So when we get new weather stripping, those will be embedded into the rubber. So we'll have new ones. We got to get these old ones out of the holes. And I want to do that kind of carefully so I don't break them off and then have the end pieces rolling around inside there. Just a couple of layers here that's hollow through these channels. And I found the best way to do that is to get a pliers on them and just wiggle them while pulling. And then they come out intact. Like that. Back and forth. If you twist them one way, you'll twist them off and they'll break. Okay, now I'm going to remove this channel. It's a metal channel just on this one side, and the weather stripping was attached to it with some sort of epoxy. So there's 3 screws holding it in, 3 little Phillips screws. I'm just going to pull those out, and then we should be able to remove that piece. These screws are in pretty bad shape. They're pretty corroded, but they weren't in there too tight, so they did come out. Now we should be able to remove this piece. I think besides the screws, there's a little adhesive underneath it. Just trying to get that to give up without bending it. Oh, okay, I see. I have, not sure if that's a screw or a rivet. The other one only had 3 screws, maybe one was missing. It's the 4th screw on this side. And now it comes right off. Okay. So now you see the full trim piece, which is riveted on. So the next step is going to be to drill these rivets out so that we can get that off. We got one piece from here to here, and then we have this other piece that's actually just crimped on, and then there's this strange shaped splice piece right here. I'll show that in more detail a little bit later. So there's another rivet in this splice piece. Okay, I think that's all that's holding the splice piece on. I'm going to carefully now pry it loose. Oh, that didn't take too much. Don't want to bend it any more than necessary. Okay. So there's that splice clip piece. See where it creates a splice between these two strips, and it's got a bend to it to follow this housing right here, and it's got a bunch of epoxy on that I'll have to clean off. And now I'm going to work on getting this piece separated from the T-top. It's besides the rivets, it's got adhesive underneath there. I already heard it break loose from some of it. There's that piece, bunch of adhesive underneath. So I'll be cleaning that up shortly. Now the only piece, there's an end cap down here. Okay, that's that piece. All right, so all the trim is off, but I want to clean up all this old epoxy. And what I used on the other one, which worked really well, is a good sharp wood chisel. Some of it's hard and some of it isn't. So it can be a little sticky in some areas. You see it's sticking in my hands. These other three sides aren't as bad. There's not as much, and it's pretty hard. All right, so I'm going to use my wire wheel on my drill and just clean up these edges, what I couldn't scrape off cleanly. I don't want to do this right next to my nails cutter. That's really nice and smooth. It's real nice. See that? It's nice and smooth, cleaned up. So hopefully by getting these surfaces nice and clean like this, the new weather stripping will lay just the way it's supposed to. All right, that piece is ready to go for stripping and prepping and repainting. What I need to do yet is still clean off the rest of the adhesive from these few trim pieces. There, I think I have the adhesive sufficiently cleaned out of there, out of that channel. This piece just needs to be cleaned. All right, there's still a gumminess to this adhesive. And what I found worked really well on the other side was carburetor cleaner. That is pretty good. So that's stripping it. We'll get it back from paint before too long, hopefully, and put it back together. All right, it's been several weeks. The car went out for paint and it's back now. Give you a quick look at that preview. So starting to put the trim pieces back on, but this is part 2 of the second half. I'm not sure if this is going to be one video or two. It's of the T-top rebuild. So anyways, I'm really happy with the way the paint turned out on the car. My buddy Bob Yeager painted it, and I think he did a fantastic job. So it's white, but it's a pearl, tri-pearl white. It's the same color that you see on a lot of modern Cadillacs and Escalades, vehicles like that. So I'm really happy with it. Anyways, on to the T-tops. So I've done one. I'm doing these videos. I kind of like to do one first, one shot at something, so that I have a better idea of what I'm doing when I actually video it and make it available to others. So let's get started. Okay, first thing I'm going to do is clean up. This has been wire brushed, but I'm going to clean off any remaining residue, and this is what I'm using, an adhesive remover, and just kind of spray it right where the old residue was. Trying to not go overboard with that because I'm nervous about it running over the side and potentially damaging the paint. I'm not sure if that stuff would damage the paint or not, but I didn't have any trouble on the first top that I did, which was the left side. I'm now working on the right side, but I'm just trying to be extra careful. So it does take off something. Maybe it's just dirt, but I think it's more than dirt. All right, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put this little trim piece back on. It has 2 screws, and it goes right down here in this corner. Flathead screw from the other direction. That piece needs to go on first because the channel that we're going to install shortly rests over the top of it. I believe the trim piece does too. So let's just kind of line it up once. Yeah, if you can see this, it ends up laying right over the top of that trim piece somewhat. Okay, we're back. So what we're going to do next is to put a little bit of this adhesive. And what I'm using is GE Premium Super Glue. Silicone glue, excuse me. And we put a little bit on that. This trim piece goes right here and gets pop riveted on. So I'm going to spread a little of this. All right, put it in place, line it up with the holes. Squeeze it down a little. That looks good. Okay, for pop rivets, I'm using 3/16 inch aluminum pop rivet. Next step, before I put the weather strip channel on, is to get the rest of the trim on. So this piece, there's no fasteners. So I'm just gonna put a little bead of that silicone glue right down in there and pop it on this edge right up here where it goes. All right, now we're gonna pop it on. And originally it was crimped on a little bit as well, but on the other panel I found that if I attempted to re-crimp it, I was marking up the top edge too much, and so I decided to just rely on the silicone. So there it is on there. gotta get this little splice piece in yet. Okay, so I'm gonna get a little of the adhesive on the back side of this splice piece. And then there's a little bit of a lip on it. See that? It's got a hook underneath these two pieces. So I've started here and then kind of rolled it over. So that grabs them. And then just slide it a little bit to line it up with the hole. Put the pop rivet in. And there's what that looks like. Could be tapped down a little bit. So there is the trim completely installed. Now we're going to move on to the weather stripping channel. I've got the adhesive on it from a few minutes ago. Line that up. Okay, so I've set the weather stripping channel into place, and now I'm going to attach it permanently with these screws that came with the weather stripping kit. So the nuts that these thread into are kind of floating around in the body of the T-top here, and so you got to get them lined up perfectly. Okay, I'm about ready to stick on the weather stripping. Just roughly laid it out here on the top and verifying that I have the right orientation. And one of the checks I'm doing on that is to make sure that these little white plugs are lining up with the holes that are in the T-top. And it is. So that's how it goes on. Just carefully put it over here. The adhesive that we're using is from 3M. It came, I don't remember if it came with the kit or actually I think I bought it separately. It was recommended to use this stuff. Black Super Weather Strip and Gasket Adhesive, fast drying black. All right, now let's start with the channel. if you look at the weather stripping, there's a little bit of a lip right here that fits into the channel. Then this cushion rides above it, and there's another lip on the back side. So I'm just going to get the front one in first. And now I'm going to work the back one in, back side. And push it down all the way across so it makes good contact with the adhesive. Now I'm going to start to plug the studs into the holes. So as I'm lining them up, I'm pushing them in. If you kind of get my finger, my thumb, about halfway down the weather stripping, just behind the head of the plastic stud that you can't see, but you can feel it. And you can feel it go into the hole and grip as it should. So that's letting me know that I've got each one of these studs properly seated. Okay, so I had this problem on the left side as well, and there's one more hole right here, but there's no plastic stud in it. So what I did is I clamped it down. So I'm going to do that. Okay, while we're waiting for the adhesive to set up a little bit on the weather stripping, I'm going to reattach some of the hardware. And I made notes when I took it apart of how things were shimmed. Now what I found with the first one, the other side, is that the new weather stripping is obviously thicker, in better condition, and so they don't sit just right yet. So there's going to be a process of shifting the shims around, but where I'm going to start is the way they were when I took it apart. But I'm pretty sure I'm going to have to do some shifting around to get everything to line up properly. Okay, so this back one had 4 shims in it. Put those into position. I'm just going to finger tighten these bolts for now. Okay, the handles can only go in one way, so you shouldn't be able to mix them up and get them in the wrong position. I'm calling them handles. They're not handles. They're lockdown clamps. Okay, the clamps are in. Then there's this little post that goes up in this front corner. And once again, that will need to be adjusted for final fitment. So we're just going to finger tighten these bolts for now. All right, I'm inside the car now. This is the opposite side that I did first, but you can see I don't have the headliner in yet. And I like how the weather stripping is sitting up against the top. So I believe it's making a good seal. I'm going to tighten down these bolts on these little, I don't know what you call them, this hardware piece that attaches into this slot, and keep it in position. And I like where that is sitting now. It lines up good on the outside. I'll show you that in a minute. This front clamp, I think, is in the right spot. So I'm going to tighten down these bolts. All right, this clamp right here goes up against a piece of the trim that's not currently in place, obviously, so I'm going to have to tighten that one down at the end after I have more of the trim in, and it clamps up into position. So here we can see the alignment, and it's good. This back corner is a little bit high right now, but I believe once I get that clamp properly working against the piece that it squeezes against, that's going to pull that into position. If not, I'll have to adjust as necessary. Okay, we're back to the left side here. This one, the weather stripping was glued in a few days ago. So anyways, I'm going to put the headliner on now that I've done an initial adjustment in the car, and I think I'm close. So I'm going to put the headliner on, and then at a later date, I may be taking this apart again, taking the headliner back off to make further adjustments to get all the alignment correct. But all we need to do is drop this into place. There's Velcro, you can kind of feel it. I'm lining up the two clips. Push it down.
Screws in.
Okay, I'm certain I'm going to have to take this off because I still haven't tightened down this rear clamp in the exact position it needs to be, because I don't know where that is until I get more of the interior installed. So, but that's it. It's fully assembled at this point. I'm going to pop it back in the car. We'll take a look. All right, there's the T-top in place. I'm pretty happy with alignment. This back corner, as I said, is still sitting up just a hair, which I think will be resolved once I get the clamp fully installed and in position. Take a look at the inside with the headliner on. So that's pretty much it for now. I am going to have to take the headliner back off and make the final adjustment in that clamp in the back. Maybe more, who knows. And if I learn something additional, I'll amend this video at a later date as the interior gets installed. But in the meantime, thanks for watching. I hope this video was helpful for you and your project. And look for another video of ours. Hopefully we can help you with something else. Have a good day.